up is not an option. And that's a very familiar phrase that we've always been using on this platform. I like to call it a mantra, that we hold firm to. But when I saw this theme, when Rev sent it over and I saw the theme, I began to think about myself. I started to process the whole theme. And if I am honest and I go back, I remember Trinell's conversation on Saturday in the therapeutic lodge. And anybody who was over there can understand that she took us in a very reflective mode, right? So I went back to that point and she spoke about negative self-talk on Saturday. She asked a couple questions like, when was the last time you listened to yourself and what was your thoughts saying? Was it negative, positive, or was it a mixture? These were the questions that she asked in the therapeutic lodge. And it got me to reflect. I started to think. And as I processed those questions, I started to think about the songs I sing. I started to think about the Tuesday mornings that I teach. I even typed it in the chat if anybody remember me typing it there. But what stood out is how many times I wanted to give up. How many times I wanted to give up. So this whole sermon, I didn't feel like talking about anybody else or, talking about others' lives, but I wanted to own in on my own because even as a child of God, I have been in that place. I'm still struggling some days with that place of wanting to give up, right? So if Rev is over there and Rev cannot say it because I know he don't like to talk, you understand? But I've felt time and time again that I don't want to teach on a Tuesday morning. I have felt time and time again that I don't want to sing the songs because I feel like I'm out of place. And I've shared this with him. I've shared this with a couple of friends, right? Sometimes the whole feeling of inadequacy comes out. I feel like I'm not a preacher, so I can't come out here and be that vibrant type of preacher that everybody else comes and they are. And I even get to the place where I think that people don't like the way I teach, or people are not even listening to me. Right? There are numerous times because of these things I felt like I wanted to give up. Right? Even though I hold firm again to the mantra, giving up is not an option. But somehow I cannot rid myself of it. Some days I feel like I really don't want to get up on a Tuesday morning. I really don't want to research. I really don't want to study. I just don't want to do it at all. And I've shared on this platform before that I feel sometimes even with the songs, I have songs to record, I have songs to write, and I feel like not doing it. I just feel completely, to give up on the whole walk as a Christian some days, right? So I remember feeling like just giving up and actually giving up, uh, you know, every single thing that I do in terms of what God would have called me to do, if I put it that way. All right. But I want you guys to understand this morning that whenever it is that we get into that situation, whenever that feeling comes over us, we have to understand and remember that feeling like giving up and actually giving up are two different things. Feeling like giving up and actually giving up are very different things. So I've shared my feelings, like I've stated before, with several people, and they help me to make sense of it all. Right? So if we use a very common word that we love to use, is that I was encouraged or I was motivated to keep on doing what I am doing. Right? Keep on pushing. So I wanted us to kind of stop by right there for a little bit and understand that motivation is a very interesting thing, right? So motivation, if we get into the meaning, it says it's the internal condition that activates behavior and gives its direction, energizes and directs goal-oriented behavior, right? But if I get into a more detailed or a deeper definition of motivation, it is a psychological feature that arouses an organism to action toward a desired goal, the reason for the action, that which gives purpose and direction to behavior. So I want us to understand motivation. So we're not the only ones who come, who from time to time feel like giving up. If we go throughout the Bible, there are several that we can identify who felt like giving up, right? They felt the very same way that we feel. So Abraham asked his servant, being Being his Abraham asked about his servant being his heir instead of the promised son. Moses experienced distress from leading the Israelites to the promised land. David struggled when his men returned to find their families kidnapped. Job, and we're familiar with that story, questioned God's hand over his life. Jeremiah lamented over and over the devastation of God's chosen people. Let's talk about Elijah. Elijah wanted God to take his life when he was pursued by Jezebel, right? Peter was distraught in his heart and soul after denying Jesus. Paul was deeply troubled from isolation and being forsaken by his so called friends. Yet, all of them had the feeling of giving up, but each one of them pressed forward in faith. Each one of them continued. So this morning, Paul encourages us, even though he was talking to Timothy in 1 Timothy 6:12, to fight the good fight of faith, lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses. So just like everyday life, you understand? Just like I would love to say a sinner, even though all of us are still sinners. So just like a person who hasn't come to Christ, just like everyday life, Christianity is a fight. It is a fight. I've proven this 3 months into being a Christian. Christianity is a fight, and we must determine that we have something worth fighting for. We have to determine that there's something worth fighting for. Else, we're not going to fight. We are going to give up. So, in the Christian life, often our motivation may look like one thing on the surface, but in actuality, it is something higher, something more noble, something more important, or something deeper. So, Paul was telling Timothy that this fight of faith is worth it. And to fight this fight, he urges Timothy to take hold of, to get a grip on the eternal life to which he was called. The eternal life to which he was called. So there's a goal. We need to identify that right there from the beginning, right? There is a goal. There's something that we are working towards. So right there and then we see hints of the higher purpose for which Paul urged Timothy to fight the good fight. Even when we become followers of Christ, we still have and still need motivation to do certain things. That's in essence what I am saying this morning. But as we are changed in the image and likeness of Jesus, our motivation is changed, or it has become sanctified along with the rest of us. It doesn't always happen overnight. And in some ways, our motivations are always being refined as with other areas of our character. All right. So I want you guys to follow me. But Paul is appealing to the highest motivations here. And this is what I want you guys to understand. There is a goal, right? So because we're fragile and because we need to be moved, to be compelled, to have a reason, for investing, whether it be our time, our money, our lives in anything, Paul is providing this higher level of motivation. We are looking towards, and last week we go back into last week's theme. We are pressing towards the mark, right, of the higher calling. So we're looking towards that eternal life. So he's telling Timothy that this is a good and worthwhile fight. It is a fight worth fighting, a contest worth competing in. And if we look at previous theme, we talk about contending for the faith, right? So yes, it takes effort. And I've always said it, Christianity is not something, that you just have. You understand? Christianity requires action. It requires us doing something. So of course it's going to take effort. So the word for fight in the original language is the same word from which we get our English word agonize. Right? So why in the world would we want to live in agony? When we choose Christianity, why in the world would we want to be agonized? Right? So if I use an example, I bring in an outside example. Why do marathon runners agonize themselves to run these long races? Right? It's a fight. It takes effort. They train for it. They put in all the work to be able to go and participate in these things. But for them, they see it as a beautiful fight. They see it as a fight that is worth fighting for, right? So despite the cost, it brings satisfaction, it brings peace, and it brings joy. They know it is hard, but they keep pushing, understanding that giving up is not an option. Sometimes we have athletes, and Rev have time and time shared that story of Redman. I forget his first name, but Rev shared the story of Redman, who his goal was never to win the race, but to complete the race, right? So a lot of the time, people go into these races. Yes, there's agony on your body. Yes, you risk, hurting yourself. You risk all of these things, but it is a risk worth taking so that he was able to complete the race. Even when he fell down, he got back up and he took his own little time to get to the finishing line. So all of these marathon runners, when you look at it, they understand giving up is not an option. They have a goal in mind that they want to attain. The same thing is taking place here in First Timothy 6, verse 12, right? And then we can ask another question, right? How can it be that, these people choose to run these long races? How can such a costly fight, whether it be running a marathon or living the Christian life, bring satisfaction? How can it bring peace? How can it bring joy? Right? But if we think about it this way, if running can bring a sense of satisfaction or accomplishment or that peace or that joy to someone, it must have some degree, or so many people wouldn't be doing it. A lot of people be doing it, right? So it's clear then, serving the King of the Kings, Lord of Lords, the maker of the universe, the one who created us, the one who paid the price for salvation, as Rev highlighted earlier when he was giving praises. When we're doing that, then we're able to get that satisfaction as well. He promises us peace. You understand? He told us that there's a joy that we gain that the world cannot take from us, right? A joy that is far above and beyond what worldly tasks or activities could ever bring. So I'm not knocking some of these things that bring satisfaction in the world. There's a tremendous sense of satisfaction that comes when you work hard to achieve something. We all know that, right? We all know that. You work hard, again, you have a goal in mind and you have attained that goal. It gives you a sense of satisfaction, right? That achievement is good. So I'm not knocking that worldly achievement, right? Because I myself have had a chance to be in several singing competition and winning several of them too. And what can I say? You understand? It was a good feeling. You understand? It was a good fight, if you will. It was a beautiful fight, despite the challenges that I may have gone through, despite the obstacles that I had to overcome, maybe in part because of those things. Maybe it was that more, what you call it, enjoyable. It was that more fulfilling because of the challenges that I've gone through to get to that goal, right? So if these earthly things, which I believe God has blessed us with, can help us to achieve a measure of satisfaction in our life, how much more can fighting, not just a good fight, but the good fight, right? These things in our lives, even as gift from God, are only a small taste of what we can experience while participating in, competing in the good fight. Now, the fight that really matters this morning is for eternity. The fight that matters is for eternity. The good fight that involves serving the purposes of God. Again, giving up is not an option. When I started out, I told you how I feel. Time and time again, I feel that way. You understand? And even though I am reassured, even though I'm encouraged, even though I'm motivated, right? I still feel like this from time to time. But guess what? There's no room for mediocrity. Therefore, you cannot give up, right? Giving up is not an option. So this is another Tuesday morning, and I am here. I am looking forward to releasing a new song. So guess what? I understand the mantra. I understand the assignment. Giving up is not an option.